What's going on, Jerome's? Hopefully you're enjoying your stress-less Sunday. Watching your fantasy team, sweating a couple of jelly beans. All that stuff is going on. But your Minnesota Vikings looking to shock the world on Monday night against the San Francisco 49ers. And a big part of that will be superstar edge rusher Danielle, the real deal Hunter. But as the Viking season is teetering right now, the league sack leader, tied for league sack lead, his name has been brought up quite a bit in terms of trade talks, and RAPSHEET on Sunday, NFL Network, decided to chime in and talk about what's going on with Danielle. RAPSHEET, go. As the trade deadline draws closer, the Vikings are receiving calls on NFL sack leader Danielle Hunter. Could he be this year's Roquan Smith? Blah, 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 blah. Now, Roquan Smith last year was dealt from the crooked Chicago Bears to the Baltimore Ravens, and compensation at the trade deadline was a second and fifth round pick, which I don't know, man. We'll get into it. But RAPSHEET, this is from Vikes Insider, RAPSHEET on TV, quote, teams have been calling the Vikings about potentially trading for Hunter, sources say, with the team leader in sacks likely one of the top players who could be moved at the deadline. Picking up the phone and listening makes sense for Minnesota. Now, I mean, sure, picking up the phone and listening makes sense, but does it make sense to move Danielle? It doesn't for a number of reasons. Number one, I say pay Danielle. Keep him in purple at least 3 to 4 years. He's still firmly in his prime, and he's a prime player at a prime position, right? And also, the difference between Danielle and Roquan Smith and other trade spots is that Danielle hasn't been actively seeking a trade. Like, he hasn't put it out there through his agent. We would have heard about it through the insiders, like, hey, trade me, or you're formally requesting a trade. That's always something that happens in this process. I actually feel like Danielle wants to stick around. But people say, well, whoa, what was his contract last couple of seasons? Yes, he wants to get market rate, but he hasn't really made any overt overtures of like, hey, trade me. Plus, I mean, there's a couple of things to factor in. Number one, we'll get into it. But Gessling, go. Strib. We're going to hear Danielle Hunter's name in trade rumors a lot between now and October 31st trade deadline, especially since he's a free agent after the season. My sense, at least at this point, is the Vikings aren't actively shopping him. And Gessling would be dialed into that building. And, a lot can happen in a week. The NFL trade deadline is not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday on Halloween, October 31st. But a lot of it does hinge on what happens these next two games, where the Vikings Monday Night Football, and then next Sunday, you're at the greasy, grimy Green Bay Packers at noon. So, I mean, the Vikings sweep and go 4-4. And then all of a sudden, I don't think you're trading Danielle Hunter. Like, you want to keep one of the best edge rushers in the game for your stretch run. But say the Vikings go 3-5. What happens then? If they somehow, some way beat themselves in the next two games, they go 2-6, and then all bets are off. But we'll see. And Danielle has shown once again that he's one of the best edge rushers in the game. I mean, last year, a little bit slow getting into the 3-4, but he did end up leading the team in sacks with 10.5. This year, leading the league with sacks with 8, as well as leading the league in stops, as well as tackles for loss. So, I mean, he's still proven that he's pretty good. And Danielle is only going to be 29 on October 29th. Happy early birthday. His golden birthday is against the Packers. The Packers. Going off for 6 sacks. Woo. He's a free agent in 2024. He has a no-tag clause, so the Vikings can't franchise tag him next year. They can't tag and trade, hence why the Vikings could be motivated to move him at the deadline. And likely would only get a 2025 third-round comp pick if he did leave in free agency. And now he's got 2 void years on the back end of his contract. 14.9 would come due in 2024 if he's not on the team. If he is, it would still spread out 7 and change over the next 2 years, and the Vikings would save around $6 million in cap if he was traded at the deadline. But there's a couple factors here. I feel like, first off, I don't know if you get big-time value, like if you get a first-round pick and a third-round pick, you do it. And if you have no inkling of re-signing Danielle, even though, Kwesi and his teams with the Browns and the Niners, he's seen the value of a talisman on the edge in Garrett and Bosa, respectively. And he has that. He has that with Danielle Hunter. And every guy that you bring in the future years, you hope is going to be 70 cents on the dollar of Danielle. But if the Vikings don't see a future with Danielle and they get a dynamite offer, which, Danielle being healthy, being amongst the league lead in sacks and being one of the best edge rushers in the game, it should be high, especially if that team does see a future with him and doesn't see him as a half a season rental, sure. But I mean, optically, again, the bar is a 2025 third round pick. In a vacuum, if you can get more than that, you do it. But optically, I think that would be a bad look. I mean, what if the best that Kwesi can get for Danielle is a 2024 third rounder and a 2025 third rounder, like 2 third rounders for the guy who's leading the league in sacks? That would be such a bad look optically that I don't think that Kwesi could do it. And I don't think that the Vikings should do it. I think that Danielle, for the rest of the season, as the Vikings are still clawing for relevancy, I think that's worth more than a third-round pick. I know that people would disagree, but that's where they're at. But now, if they get a knockout offer, then they could sell it to the public. Say, hey, we couldn't turn down this first, third, and a fifth, and go from there, right? That does make sense. So I think that's where it starts and ends, is a first-round pick. And the Vikings, I mean, Davenport's on injured reserve. Wanham's playing well. Jones and Carter the second, and Villain and Whitley would get some more run if they did trade Danielle. But also, I mean, the cupboard's pretty bare for the future since Danielle, Davenport, and Wanham are all free agents, and none of them are locks to be back next season. But I don't know. Like, this is frustrating for me because you have one of the best players in the league. Even though he's redone his contract over the last 3 off seasons to get him close to market rate, he wants one big-time deal, and he deserves it, and he's earned it. Make it happen here with the Vikings. And you don't have to go New Orleans Saints with the cap, but you can work this thing out where you pay Hockenson, where you pay Darisaw, where you pay Jefferson, where you pay Danielle. Maybe you pay Cousins. I don't know. But you can work things out, and he's worth it. Again, he's worth it. He's still firmly in his prime, one of the best in the league. Hang on to Danielle unless you get knocked out for offer. Like, the worst thing that Kwesi could do is let him go for him. Like, even the Roquan Smith. Like, if Kwesi trades Danielle for a second and a fifth, no, don't do it. First rounder, minimum, and then use that draft capital, go find your quarterback in the future, and then go from there. Man. But your thoughts are thoughts. RAPSHEET says that teams are calling the Vikings about Danielle Hunter. Let us know your thoughts and our thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. Want to support the work? Put a little something in the Venmo. But till next time, Skol, production value.